Hey guys, this will be video 20 for the how to design build a 59 Carina Les Paul replica using Stuart McDonald templates, and I probably will talk about the templates a little bit in detail later on in the video, but and also I didn't get to finish my title introduction, a Peter Green replica. And I had some asshole make a comment last week about, why would you build a Peter Green? Why don't you build a me Les Paul? And it's comical. It let me know how, when you're getting old, when you don't give a you know what about statements like that by guys like that. But if you're still out there, whoever you are that commented, you're more than welcome to stick around and watch and learn how to build guitars. But in direct response to you, I have built a ton of custom guitars. And I'll tell you why I don't build me guitars anymore. It's because when you build me guitars, they typically have no value to anyone other than yourself. So, and I'm really being serious. So proceed with extreme caution if you start deviating and painting things weird colors. But when you stick to traditional, and this is one of the first things that I learned from watching and studying the Robert Benedetto videos, was he was talking about how, for the most part, stay very close to traditional and don't deviate, because that's what the masses are comfortable with and that's what they want. And no one wants to walk out on stage with, something that's odd, or that someone may laugh at them about for walking out. And speaking of that, I'll try to not turn this into a historical introduction, but I know The Edge from U2, the band U2, obviously, when they were a very young band and beginning to get their claws in the ground in the States. The Edge was up in New York. He walked in a music store. He needed a new guitar. I think his guitar had gotten lost in flight. And he walked into this music store, and there was the 76 limited edition Explorer hanging on the wall. And he, being a young man at the time, was intrigued by it, but typically that wasn't a very well recognized guitar. Until, he was intrigued by it, but he was scared to buy it because he was afraid the guys in the band would joke with him about it or make fun of him. But he basically made the statement that, once I played it, once I felt it, and once I heard it, that was it. I had to have it. But he was really worried what the guys in the band were going to say when he opened up the case and showed it to him. And I think it was even Bono that was like, we don't give a, if it sounds like that, we don't care what it looks like. So that's probably a long introduction started by whomever that guy was that commented. And I don't think he was being too snarky. He was probably just having a bad day. But that's why I don't build me guitars much anymore. And speaking of, this is a me guitar, and that'll give you an idea of what I would build for myself. Ebony cap, on the bass there. That's kind of jazz guitar standards. And this guitar started out with a Floyd Rose. Literally had this Floyd Rose on there, playing it, loved it, sounded incredible, but changed my mind and decided to go with the traditional hardtail. And that's why it has that route in the back, and you can see where I epoxied in the Honduran mahogany base there to bring it back into close standards. And I got thinking, if anything, this thing was so heavy, it really helped relieving all that material, because this is a chambered guitar, heavily chambered guitar, but an engineered chamber, and it's still a fairly heavy guitar. But I thought, if anything, I could come in here and route this out, do a cover that replicates the other covers, and within this cavity, I could take advantage of probably creating some sort of, or actually installing a range master in this body with the volume and tone controls back here. And then once you walk out on stage, oh wow, that's cool, black top Les Paul standard, because it's not the custom. But little do they know, under the hood, it was once a Floyd Rose equipped 50s Les Paul. Okay, so yeah, I've built a hell of a lot of me guitars right up to the point where you try to sell them and you can't give them away, and you're suffering because you're trying to figure out, man, what did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? It's because this is what people want. This is what people love. This is what holds its value. Other than that, a little bit of a spook right there. And I had a lot of guys comment, it's like, oh wow, why did you do that? That looks weird. That's kind of funny. Well, because I was building this guitar to be a session guitar that I was going to use in Nashville for doing my recording. And obviously it's sold now. But nonetheless, that's the only deviation from traditional. Other than one cat had commented, hey, it's kind of strange that that headstock looks just a little bit wider. And I'll go ahead and get this elephant out of the room for that guy in the event I forget. This headstock is 100%, well, from here up, it's 100% 1950s. But when I think from a standpoint of when they originally designed this guitar, they had the low E and the high E in way too much. Therefore, this string was coming off and it's going down this plane, this vector here, and all of a sudden it turns in. Well, you get binding. You get a major issue right there with tuning. And this one wasn't nearly as bad, but that one was diving in way too much. And on that note, see if I can get my bamboo skewer here. You can already see in the 50s design, they got this string and this is too wide. It's okay, I left it because you don't want to start deviating too much because like what Robert Benedetto said, you start changing, you'll end up with a Paul Reed Smith. But this string is already way too close to that tuner. And then you can see this one right here, when they had it in tighter, that string was almost touching that shaft. And the same thing over here. So yes, it is opened up about it's not about, it's exactly 1/16 of an inch further off the center on the low E and 1/16 of an inch off the center down that direction off the high E. That's off the center. So is this a 50s Les Paul? It's pretty damn close because this curve and this cut right here where that point hits is about as close to historically accurate as you can get. So I say all these things to say this. You'd be shocked at how quickly 1/16 of an inch will, I want to stay on this. This is pretty important. You'll be shocked at how quickly 1/16 of an inch will make a fool out of you. But if you're really, good, and I'm going to be pretty arrogant here and say for the most part, I was able to achieve a 50s profile replica. However, modernize it enough that it's very functional, like a nice jazz guitar or a session guitar. You're in a studio in Nashville, Austin, Atlanta, LA, New York, and time's clicking away. You don't have time to be fighting tuning issues on an old 50s Les Paul or something like that. Okay? So I think the ability to build this guitar and it look, like a Peter Green. I shouldn't say just Peter Green. Hell, Peter Green was not the only one that played a faded burst Les Paul. A lot of those guys were playing that guitar. And I won't start talking about that. But nonetheless, I think it's pretty cool to be able to build that guitar, yet under the hood, it functions and it's much lighter, like a really high-end custom jazz guitar. And that's why I always say jazz guitar, jazz guitar, jazz guitar, because if you can build a jazz guitar, especially per Benedetto specs, you can build anything. And when I say anything, anything. So, all right, let me check the time. 9 minutes. I was afraid it was going to be like 15 minutes of BS rambling there. All right, so anyway, I got to get back at that guy that left that smart-ass comment. I left it up, and I'm really serious. It doesn't bother me at all. And I appreciate you guys watching, even if you don't agree with what I do or how I do things, because, hey, I can assure you, I learn a lot of times I learn from you guys that comment as well. All right, so let's talk about this little guitar as to what has taken place since the last video. Let me get my coffee off the table so I don't knock anything off the table. And what we're going to be talking about in this video is going to be, water slides, headstock decals and stuff like that, which I do not do, I cannot do, and you better not do, especially if you're selling things. That'll get you in major trouble from a legal standpoint. And Gibson has every right in the world to pursue you if you're doing that, especially if you're doing it for money. So, but what took place was, we'll talk about, and what I was meaning to finish talking about there is I'm going to spend a little bit of interesting time talking about how to prepare to finish your guitar or do things that maybe you forgot about and make your own plates and save money, or either at a minimum make something that is a 50s replica. So I'm going to talk a little bit about plastic and how to do routing and which bits to use and stuff like that. And in case I forget, little bits like this, because everything about building this guitar, or any guitar for that matter, it can be done with very basic hand tools and or woodwork tools in your shop. You need to be really proficient with a table saw. You really need to be good with a miter saw, because you'd be surprised how little you use the miter saw, but when you do need it or want to use it, man, oh man, what you can do with the miter saw is off the charts. You got to have a router and a good, and I suggest a good routing table as well. So anyway, but what did I do to this guitar? I installed the truss cover, and I'm going to pull these plates here in just a moment. But obviously, machined that plate right there, drilled out everything to receive the potentiometers, the control cavity, all the parts in the control cavity, and then changed these screws over to the authentic screw that Gibson would use. Now, these are actually stainless steel. So, and why? Because I live in South Florida. I lived in South Florida on my boat between 2005 and 2020, almost 20. And some of the guitars, I had one of my guitars down there, and it did not have stainless, and they got a little bit rusty. Now, it's pretty cool. It looked kind of awesome because it was up in here, and it wasn't a Les Paul. It was a 50s Penguin replica, but they rusted pretty well. And I kept them oiled after I realized they had rusted, and it actually kind of looked cool. But we don't want that, so I use stainless steel on these screws, so it can go. I can ship another guitar to Puerto Rico, because the last Explorer I just built, the white one with the mahogany neck, went to Puerto Rico. So always be prepared that your guitar may be going to an extremely salty climate. Okay. So we're gonna pull these covers in just a minute and talk about this guitar. If I can ever get my on track, and I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to pause. I'm not going to erase this video. So if I ramble a little bit or go off the rails, trust me, I'll get myself back on the rails just by looking at the table and clearing off the table. And we are definitely going to be talking about, in case I forgot, this Carina guitar at the latter part of this video. But this guitar is actually about to be shipped to North Tampa, Florida, north of Tampa. So it's staying in the States, which is pretty cool. And a super nice guy that I've talked to that bought this guitar. What do they call it? Semper Fi? Go Semper Fi. He's a disabled veteran, and I haven't talked to him about that. And I appreciate your service, and not just yours, but all the other guys that have served with you. And I'm getting ready to start my flight training. I'm a student pilot, and I'm going to digress here just briefly, but this ties back into you guys that are military. I almost went in the Air Force when I was a kid, and I was going to fly the F-16, because my family lineage goes all the way back to NASA and the Korean War and stuff like that. My second cousin, twice removed, or my first cousin twice removed, was Gus Grissom, the Apollo 1 astronaut, which was the captain of the Apollo, and he was instrumental in all that aviation program. But as of right now, I'm getting ready to start my training again, and I was talking to this guy that was a Vietnam pilot, and I was looking at some of his information, and there was a statement made about something about the toast. When they toast when they make a toast to whatever event they're at, they make a toast something along the lines of, this is for those who serve along with us, and can make a toast, or it's also for those who are no longer with us and can't make a toast. And so I thought, how cool that you cover both respects there. So I'm gonna stop talking about that because I know not everyone's into the military and the whole military thing, but this guy bought a guitar for me, and I like to honor what it is that people have done or not do, and I even like to try to keep it as broad as possible when I'm doing these videos because I have to be really careful because man, I've got people viewing in from all over the world, so I have to be really cautious about what I say or what I don't say, or what I believe or what I don't believe, because you guys, if you haven't checked out by now, hopefully you haven't, but the reason you come to these videos is because you want to learn how to build a guitar. But speaking of that, let's do just that. So let's talk about finishing this little guitar, and let's pop some covers, and we'll talk about my plastic. So anyway, Brian, appreciate it, and man, I appreciate you buying the guitar. And it was the reason I kind of bring this up is we had a spook about the shipping, and on the surface, it was one of those things that uh, had I've not realized that, oh wow, I really did make a mistake on my shipping, and I could tell that he got really spooked. Not that he didn't trust me, but he was concerned about the carrier. And had I been having a bad day or something like that, if I had have not read between the lines between the emails, I might have thought, oh great, this guy's being really really demanding, or what have I got myself into? And so I say all that to say this: be extremely careful if you work for clients, because our whole one-way communication thing via email and text and all that crap can really really get out of hand. But when you're standing there, in the parking lot talking to somebody about something that might even be a problem, it's usually pretty easy to manage that problem because the communication is easier. So anyway, it was cool. He was nice, and I admitted I made a mistake, and we got it corrected. And she's going to be shipping via UPS, and I just got back from the UPS and got my quotes and got all that under control. So keep in mind, if you're going to be building guitars to make money, building the guitar is it's about 75% of it, but the other 25% is knowing how to manage everything that goes along with it. I have this marked B and T, and I'm glad I did, because since I just dropped it, I would have never known which direction to put it. So I got a T and a B. That does not stand for treble or bass, which typically that would if you're marking something. That just stands for top and bottom, and there's an arrow through it. So anytime I flip that poker chip around, I know not that these are not perfectly square, but that they probably, well, it's very unlikely that they are not perfectly square because it's handmade. Okay, so but when you install it on your guitar, you start with that one first, and then you make certain that you align it with the binding. Don't worry too much about what's going on right here. And we're really splitting hairs about being a perfectionist, but you know so you put that screw in first, and then you make certain that all the others are in place, but then you make certain that you mark your cover. I'll stop talking about that because most of this stuff is common sense. But now I can just lay that over to the side. And this has been sealed about, at least 6 or 7 times with nitrocellulose lacquer. But because it's in the cross grain, it's so porous, it looks like it's not sealed. I can assure you it is 100% perfectly sealed, and it is never going to be a problem. Why? Because this guitar might be going to, well, it is going to a tropical climate. He lives pretty close to the beach right there on the Gulf. So it's very important that you seal everything. And in case I forget, the oh, I got the. I'll go ahead and get that tape off. The reason I had that tape on there and this is incredibly important. The reason I had that tape on there is so that when you have this guitar flipped over and you're reaching down in here with a brush painting this, and you flip it over or something like that, gravity will is not your friend. Okay, what could happen is nitro could come out the back and then start running down this edge. And if this were black, that would be an absolute nightmarish situation. Okay, so keep some tape on there, but don't fill this in like a swimming pool. Only use that. Only use gravity to your advantage over here. And when you, I'm gonna stop because I'm getting too elementary. But when you just don't load your brush up. But if you do start entering, make sure you're holding your brush back, and then when you tip forward, then you start doing your primer work or sealing. But make certain you have that tape over there so you don't drip and destroy the back of your guitar. Okay, and there's certain guitars that you might be working on. Making a mistake like that is not an option, and you will get in major trouble if you're working on a multi. Uh, we're talking three, four, $500,000 guitar, a Gruins or someone like that. You can't do stupid stuff like that. So now, before I forget, let's just go ahead and finish this up so I can put the cover back on it. I had mentioned in the last video, yeah, I kind of like the idea of just, drilling this 7/8 inch hole up to a certain point and stopping. But I'd forgotten that on the Les Paul, you don't have that much depth because I've built so many Explorers. Uh, this one's a little bit different because I had a short jack. I'm not going to start talking about that, but I had mentioned that just leave a small hole in here and run the wiring straight through. But but as I was drilling this out, I realized, oh man, I need to just let the large Forstner bit just come straight in. And all this was done on a drill press. I'll talk about that in a minute. But this way, when he orders his uh, Les Paul potentiometer layout, if he goes with a traditional, he could go ahead and order it with the jack already soldered in place. And then when he feeds this in, he feeds the wiring in there, drops the potentiometers in, and then all he's got to do then is feed the three-way harness. Because see, it can't be a complete harness since it's not a hollow body. When you put your three-way in harness in, it will. It, I would recommend going ahead and getting a harness that is pre-wired, and then that way you're just feeding the wires down the channel. They're sticking out, and all you're literally doing is just connecting the grounds, and you're connecting the to the volume of the neck and the bridge. Am I looking at that backwards? Yeah, that would be the bridge, I think, and that would be the neck in a traditional guitar. So that's why I went ahead and machined that out. Okay? Because if I hadn't have machined it deep enough, and then he ordered a kit, even if it were separate, but if the jack was long, then he's sitting there at his home trying to figure out, how do I take a chisel or a drill and drill that deeper? And he's cussing me the whole time, or, and he should be, he's got the right to. Whereas, uh, for me, it was a walk in the park to just put it on my drill press and do every bit of this by hand in a real nice controlled environment. You try to do this freehand, it's not going to work out. You're probably going to you're just going to risk getting off a little bit, and you're going to risk binding. And if it hangs really bad with like a 1/2 inch Milwaukee drill, that drill is unforgiving. It's going to keep torquing, and it's going to split and tear that apart. So we don't want that to happen, with our client when we send our guitars to them. Do everything you can to make their job really easy, especially if you're going to sell them like this, where it's not a project. It's just left open to where if someone wanted to come in here, as I had mentioned, and do custom potentiometers, add a kill switch or a master volume and all that jazz, or I think it was even, I'm not going to spend too much time talking about this because I don't know, but I think it was even Eddie Van Halen that didn't want his three-way on his Wolfgang right there. Or I do know that he changed it so that in the up position, that was the bridge, and then in the down position that was a neck. I know that's for certain one of the things, because when he was doing his tapping and hammering on work, he kept, that was in the way for him getting to the neck. So he kept it up like that. And I think he wanted to originally put the three-way down here or something, just have a volume. But I'm pretty sure that's what it was, because he didn't really care for tone. So that's why I like this little guitar. Once it goes in its case and it goes in that box, I'm not being a smartass, but I don't care. Y'all can do whatever you want, And I'm not being a jerk. I'm just saying the sky's the limit with this platform. Okay, but don't make it difficult by doing things that are custom and easy for you in the shop, because to to most people that's a difficult situation if that was a big heavy block of wood right there. Let me check the time, because I know I'm getting way too long-winded on a lot of stuff, but 25 minutes, that's not too bad. One thing I may do to keep this video under control, since I'm kind of just going off the cuff here, is not spend too much time talking about this guitar. So if you just came to talk about, or to see about that, I fast forward and see if I ever got there. Okay. So speaking of that, let's talk about the transit. Okay, let me do this. Let me pause, and I'm going to put this guitar back together. There's no sense in talking about the truss rod because I've already talked about that, and I do know that screw right there, I did shorten it just a little bit and basically kind of machined it so that it's because of the double adjustable truss rod, but it functions just like a normal truss rod cover. But if you tighten that up too much, any screw like that in that area, if you tighten it too much, you run the risk of stripping it out. And I'll give you a little bit of a trick here. If you're if you're making your own truss cover, like truss cover or any type of cover, or either you have a truss cover, sometimes there's nothing. If you just left it flat on the back, but when you drilled and machined for this, if you didn't make certain that you came back in here and leveled this, that plate is not going to lay very flat. It's going to have those little ridges where the threads on the screw pulled it up a little bit. So what you can do is you can come in here with this little bit right here, just freehand, and you can actually I'm not going to do it because I don't want to do it on here, but you can give it one or two spins, the full 360, and create a little bit of a recess. See, that's the finished recess. That is the finished recess for the outside of the plate. And you have to keep in mind, every bit of this was done by hand on my drill press, where I'm stopping the drill press at the appropriate depth so that pan head screw with the bevel on the bottom sits really nicely. But there's nothing wrong with, since it's flat on this backside, if you wanted to open that up just a little bit to allow that plate to sit better, there's nothing wrong with that. I hope that makes sense, and I don't want to spend any more time talking about it because I've already spent too much time talking about other things. So just know that there's nothing wrong with coming in on the back side if you got a hole there and creating a little bit of a cavity to go over the material where the screw might be pulling it up. All right, now let me pause. I'm going to put her back together, clean the table off a little bit, and figure out how to get out of this video. Okay, I think what I'm going to do is just go ahead and in real time, go ahead and reseal this and kind of show you exactly how I would do this. And you might be thinking, well, you've already explained it clear enough that we don't really need any more instruction, but obviously, sometimes I have to remind myself, somebody might be watching this video that has never even built a guitar. Okay, so let me see if that's in the camera. Should be in the camera enough. There's there's very little nitro in the bottom of that, and this is a little little jar that I paint out. That I don't spray out of that. I just use it as a to brush out of and for sealer work. Okay, so you don't have to worry about any dripping right there. So the main problem you have to worry about is making sure that we don't drip on this right here or over here. So let's gauge this. So there's nothing wrong with, dipping your brush down there and getting a pretty full amount, holding it for a second till it did drop. Now, if I hold it down this way, see how it's not dropping? I mean, we're pretty much guaranteed it's not going to drip, okay? But I'm going to push it a little bit to the limit. I just dipped, and you see how I got a pretty big puddle right there? If you lean your brush back a little bit and hold it, now stand it up. That way, once you go into this cavity, and you're just being real careful about, don't let the brush get too far out to the edge. Just keep the brush down in there. That way you actually get a really good seal job, and you don't risk, I'm gonna have to do this possibly off camera because of the gravity. Yeah, I'm gonna have to do this off camera because of gravity. I can't risk. Let's see if I can keep that in the camera. Basically, I'm holding it like that right there. But I'm gonna have to do it. I'm gonna have to do it off the camera. I apologize. But I'll show you what I did in just a second. I loaded the brush up, tip it up flat, and then I just stuck it in the hole there. Like that. You should be able to see that. Okay, that's what I'm doing. And just working it around. I have a carpet runner under my foot, and right now the headstock is actually just sitting directly on the carpet. Okay, I apologize that's not on the camera. But basically I just had the guitar standing straight up, perfectly sealed. About 10 times. It doesn't need any more. It didn't need that. But I just wanted to show you, I got a little bit of a dry spot right there. Lift the brush, let it drip, hold it flat, enter in. And the thing about doing sealing on raw wood, keep it wet, and it'll just keep soaking and soaking and soaking. But if you just do one shallow coat, it'll just kind of coat the surface of the wood, and it might create a film that then will not allow the nitro to continue penetrating into the wood, or polyurethane, or white paint, whatever it is you're doing. Keep it kind of wet, not too thin, because it'll be a runaway nightmare. But keep it wet, and it'll keep penetrating. As long as you keep that material wet, it'll just keep saturating and saturating and saturating. Okay. It doesn't need it. It might look like it's dry up here, but that's just dust from being in the shop for so long. And I'm not going to seal that anymore because I kid you not, that probably has 15 or 20 coats of sealer on it. It just doesn't need it. And I don't want to risk dripping on the body just to try to show you how to take a brush and seal that. You already know that stuff. Okay, now let's let that dry for just a moment. And I'm going to pause, clean up the brush. Then we're going to put the covers on it, and then I'll end the video. Okay, I keep thinking of things that I need to talk about just from an instructional standpoint, or order of operations as to how you would finish the guitar, this actual guitar or any guitar. So let's talk about this guitar. If you were to sight line, you can actually look in this hole and look in that hole, and you can actually see all the way down to your three-way. Okay, I might not be able to get the drill bit to pick up on here. Yeah, you might be able to see the drill bit. Let me see if I can see it. Yeah, should be able to see that. Okay, so that's awesome, because what does that do? It makes it almost idiot-proof as far as installing your three-way, which is pre-wired with, I think, three wires, and it might be four. No, I'm pretty sure it's three. Because it's funny, when I do solder work, sometimes I build them differently. At a minimum, you'll have three. You'll have the neck, and then the bridge, and then you'll have the ground and hot if you're working with the braided. So at a max, you probably should just have three, unless you're doing some trickery. Okay, so so the first thing I would do with this husk is I would feed those three wires first and let them come all the way down. Then I would feed in the then I would probably go ahead and do the potentiometer install, and then the jack if it's not a component. If it's in component, then go ahead and do the jack. Then actually install the neck pickup wire, which will go in right there. If that's in the camera, yeah, it should be in the camera. The neck pickup wire, and I would push this all the way down, but I'm scared it's not long enough to come all the way through. And then install your bridge. Oh, got some fray on the end there. Sorry, bear with me for a second. Technical difficulty. I can't remember the path of that. Yeah, I'm sorry. I thought it went over further. Okay. Then install your bridge. So it is drilled. Okay. So you won't have to do any drilling or any machine work at all. So let's recap that. First thing I would install is I would feed the three-way harness in first, let those wires hang loose, and then just fold them over out of the way. Then install the potentiometer kit, whether you just install the potentiometers and do all the soldering by hand. They're in place. There's nothing wrong with that. Then install the jack, then install the neck pickup, then install the bridge pickup. And the reason I wanted to talk about this a little bit in this video, if for some reason you ran into what we just ran into there, where it's kind of binding a little bit, if you wanted to, you could feed some, I think they call it chasing line through there, and then once you get everything placed, then just pull everything through. Okay, I've done that a lot, and you can actually also do that if you were doing some glue up and you wanted to clean out the risk of overflowing epoxy. You could tie a little cloth to that, saturate it with lacquer thinner, and pull that back and forth through a channel to make certain that it's nice and clean. But with this, if for some straight, you're not going to have the problem. The only place you might run into a problem is if you did all this wiring and then maybe you tried to feed this neck in last. Okay, unlikely. You probably wouldn't. It should be okay. But if you had this little chaser string in there, then it would definitely not be a problem, even if you had it loaded full of wiring, and then you're able to tape the chasing wire or string at the other end of the braided wire and then pull it through, even if it's a little bit tight. Okay, but if you follow my order of operations on the install, it'll be a breeze. Okay. Now, I'm not even going to pause. I'm just going to put some covers on it and not even talk about that other guitar, because for some reason this video just kind of got out of control as far as timing, and I don't want to waste anyone's time talking about something in the latter 45 minutes of the video that most people have probably already checked out by now. All right, so let's put these covers back on. I can't think of anything. Let me think if there's anything I should talk about as I'm doing this. No, I'm going to pause, put the covers on, and then we'll close out the video talking about logos and water slide. Okay, I'll just do this one plate on camera, because this plate is, this is one of the main reasons I did this video, is to show this plate and an option you have. This is a black material, but if you want, and I'm not going to do it because it actually looks really good with the white, But if you wanted it to look like the vintage black, just come in here with a Sharpie and just Sharpie across it once or twice, and it'll paint it black and it'll never bleed through. Okay, so if you wanted to make it look like it's an authentic cover, then just Sharpie the corner. But typically, what I do here, put that screw because we want this to conform just a little bit. And when you put the jack in, uh, I'm not really sure what to recommend as far as because once this goes in, and I'm not tightening these yet. Once this plate goes in and it's torqued in, it does have the curvature of the body in it. But I know that if in a real world, once you're putting these final 4 screws in here, you've already got the jack installed and it's torqued fairly tight. So I'm thinking along the lines of, because see, this is just a flat cover, you might want to put like a little neoprene washer on the back side of the jack because it doesn't have to ground there, and that would give the jack a little bit of a cushion on the I don't have any fingernails. You can't put a neoprene washer out there, or you don't really want to. But so that's going to be fairly flat. It's not going to have an actual washer on it, I don't believe. I can't remember. But you might want to put a little bit of a neoprene washer on the back side just so that it gives it a little bit of room for this plate to curve. Okay. As they say, common sense, but not really. You know, a lot of times, and even I get myself in a situation where I think I know exactly what I'm doing or how I want to do something, only to discover I learned how not to do it. But what I did, I just gave those 2 right there just a kiss. They are bottomed out. They're where I want them. And now just put a little bit of pressure, but not too much. Take that corner down until it stops, and then and I just felt it move into a curved position. So now kiss it about a 1/16 of a turn. There's no sense in torquing these at all. They do not. But keep going. If you can turn it with just like finger, if you can turn it with finger pressure, then it's not tight enough. Once it stops, you know that's plenty tight enough. Don't put your wrist into this at all. Okay, so we've got a curvature. It's really beautiful. And I may be really overthinking that whole jack thing, but just pay attention to it. But that's what I'm talking about. You see the white around it, and if you didn't like that white, once you Sharpie it, then it'll be black. All right. I apologize for the long video because I know there's about 10 minutes there that could have been left out. But let's talk about logos and let's talk about what not to do. I'm not going to go into the legal aspects of this, but the only reason I have this here is because I needed it for scale. And I was restoring an authentic 1980 Gibson Les Paul that the headstock was gone, and I was going to have to do the entire headstock. So I didn't have a problem doing that because it was an authentic Gibson. You can't do that on these replicas. That'll get you in major trouble with good reason. Be real careful. There's a white dot there, but there's a guy on eBay that sells these. He is a custom vintage banjo and guitar restoration specialist in the Carolinas, but he sells these and they're incredible when you're doing layout, or like when I built Explorers. I like when I was figuring out what the headstock should be. When I was figuring out just how long this headstock can be or how short it can be, I needed that Gibson logo just to show me where I was. Okay, or was I too short? Was I too long? Was I too wide? Was I too left? Was I too right? But don't start putting logos on guitars. You can do it if it's your personal guitar, but I can't do it. Okay, as the builder. Same thing with the water slide here. I needed it because of the whole headstock scale, but I don't mind telling you it was extremely tempting on my own guitar here to possibly put that on there. And it's kind of funny if you want to know the truth. I wish it said Larry Allers, and I'll leave it at that. Do your research, and you'll find that Larry Allers is the man that should be getting all the recognition, or at least a lot of the recognition for that guitar right there. Mr. Larry Allers, he was one of the primary woodworkers in the custom shop in the Gibson shop back in the 50s. And if I'm not mistaken, I think he's the one that kind of did the final designs on this guitar. Okay, so they should have had his name on that headstock rather than Les Paul. Les Paul was just the endorser at the time, kind of like the Eddie Van Halens of the world. Eddie, didn't really do any authentic full-blown design. He did a lot of really wild ass tinkering and did some really cool stuff, and man, we all owe him an enormous amount. But you know there's a lot of guys behind the lines that don't get mentioned, and should. But Keith Williams of 5 Watt World has a great video. I think it's called A Short History of the Les Paul Burst, or the actual Les Paul. And he is the man that I learned about Larry Allers from. So I'll give him full credit there for helping me learn that stuff. You can buy this type stuff. I got that guy's off eBay. I don't know if it's to scale. This came from the UK, and it's spot on. Okay, so let me check the time, but we'll probably end it at 46 minutes. Wow, terribly long video. I hope it wasn't a waste of any time. I tried to dive back in and talk about this guitar as much as possible. Any specifics related to this guitar that you want to know, they're in the last video. And I'm not going to start talking about anything as far as specs, scale, widths, thicknesses, you name it. I covered that stuff in the last video. And also, I want to get this thing in a box and get it on a UPS truck and get it headed south. So if you have any questions or comments, let me know. I'll talk about that guitar in the next video, because once this guitar is gone, we'll dive back in and we'll actually finish a Carina, a 58, 59, 60 Carina, Les Paul replica with a Honduran mahogany cap. Doesn't have the fretboard yet, still up in the air, but beautiful guitar. Beautiful guitar. We'll talk about this, and I'll talk about what you can do as far as scarf joints. This is my personal guitar. I've never, ever in my life built a guitar with a scarf joint, but it worked extremely well. I would not do that for a client, but I only did it because when I built this 58 Explorer replica out of this unbelievably, insanely rare quarter sewn, almost pure quarter sewn Carina, I had just enough wood left over to just barely get my own guitar. So that's what prompted this video series here. And I'll get back on point and we'll finish the guitar pretty much in real time, and we just will. So I appreciate you guys dropping in, and I'll see you in the next video. And I'm looking at the table here just to make certain I didn't forget anything important. I don't think I did, so I'll stop talking and see you in the next video. Thanks.